Okay, go on.
Hello, wonderful business owners. Welcome to today's IG Live, your people and your business, with me, Dorcas, your host, and CEO Anita Riafe. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we are going to talk
Hello.
about prioritizing labor compliance, a must for small business success. Hello, Anita. You're welcome to another discussion today. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's been a bit of a crazy day. I don't think anything's gone correct today, but we're here.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, let's go straight into it. Can you tell us what labor compliance is?
Okay. So labor compliance just basically means following the labor laws, or in some other jurisdictions they refer to as employment laws of the country. And these are laws or regulations that governs how employers manage their workers. Okay, so if you have workers, whether it's 1 or 1,000 or more, you've got to follow these labor laws to manage them. And the labor laws basically just give the basic minimum that an employer should offer their workers. And it doesn't matter whether it's 1 worker or 1,000 workers. So that's what it is,
Okay,
in
okay.
short.
Can you explain why labor compliance is crucial for small business success?
On a serious note, it's very important for small businesses because when they do flout the labor law, meaning that when they breach the labor law, sometimes the compensation they have to pay is very hefty. It's enough to maybe even sometimes take your business down, your reputation, and all of that. So it can have a real significant impact on small businesses, which is why a lot of the discussions we have on IG is targeting small businesses, because we know there's a lot more of them on the Instagram. It's very, very important to at least just, I always say, do the basic minimum. And sometimes what happens is that, we get into a comfort zone with our workers because we're entrepreneurs, and it takes a bit of time for people's businesses to grow, for them to now see the need for structure. So they handle their workers very informally. And then before you know it, you hire a worker who is a bit different from what maybe what others have tolerated or understood. That particular worker may not, and then you will find yourself in situations. So we say, so because we don't want to be having this type of problem, we should just follow the basic minimum. At least that one we know we're within the law, and we reduce the risk of flouting it. So yeah, that is one of the reasons why we tend to talk a lot about this with our small businesses, because we know that it can have a very significant impact on them when they breach it.
Okay, so can you tell us then some of the challenges that these small businesses face when we talk about labor compliance?
I think it's really difficult for small businesses. Let's just define even what we mean by that. So we have the micro, the micro may only have 1 to 5. Even let's say sometimes it's defined as 1 to 10 employees at most. Then you have where we begin from the SMEs, who are maybe from 10, 15 or 25 up. And it's very difficult, when you're a small business where you fall under the micro, where you have like 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 employees, to comply, because a lot of the businesses are trying to survive. They're not, our economy is not as strong as other jurisdictions. So, sometimes you hear people saying we're in a false economy in Africa and all of that. Is because it's not stable, right? So small businesses really find it a challenge to run their businesses, because things like loans and the support you get other places, we don't really have it here. So a lot of the time, to be honest, small businesses are working from, like hand to mouth, they're literally using the money they're making to kind of run everything. And sometimes that means they don't really have it's not like they don't want to comply. I know sometimes the perception is that they don't want to comply, but we know that's not true, because we do a lot of work with SMEs, and sometimes they just can't afford to be compliant. That's just as simple as that. They can't afford to be compliant. We know that is not a reason, because the law doesn't recognize that, but that is the reality. Being compliant is expensive. So sometimes people are flouting the law because they can't be compliant, because they can't afford the compliance. So that is one of the main reasons. And sometimes too, outside of that, they don't know the law. They don't know what the labor laws are saying. Some rely on friends, some rely on the basic knowledge they have. And yes, you can say, yes, why don't they go and find out? But it's never as black and white as that. You know, people start businesses on their passions, and then later on they realize there's all these other things that they have to do. So sometimes too, they just generally don't know the law, or they go and ask the wrong people for advice and feedback. So, that also causes them to have issues. So yeah, these are some of the main reasons.
Okay, so what then are some of the consequences of neglecting labor compliance?
There's a lot of consequences. I think we're trying to put together um, some information on this, isn't it? We've said about doing unfair terminations, which is one of the, in Ghana anyway, is one of the highest disputes in the Labour Commission, which is unfair terminations, because due process is not followed. And this time I'm talking as an arbitrator for the NLC. So that usually will come with, compensation to the employee. Sometimes it may be a reinstatement. Other times, if the relationship cannot be salvaged, then it's a compensation that has to be paid. And we're talking thousands of cedis, and if you put it into dollars, thousands of dollars. So there are consequences. Sometimes it can be a fine, right? It can be a fine. It really depends on the breach and the offense, but it can be a fine. It can be a retraction of your license, depending on which area of industry you're in. Reputational damage, which you don't usually want. I mean, I think we've seen over the years a few globally, and also even in our own jurisdiction, companies whose reputation got damaged from bad labor practices that they've never really actually recovered. So it does have a consequence. And what we're trying to say is that prevention is better than cure. If you can avoid it, avoid it. Do, as I keep saying, the minimum. But it does have a significant impact on SMEs, and fines, license withdrawal, reputational damage, and sometimes even what we call liability, being taken to court. Legalities are also there. Some people can decide to skip even the Labour Commission, just take it straight to court, right? All that has a negative impact on your business. Yeah. So those are some of
Okay.
the consequences.
Okay, so as an HR consultant, or as having an HR consultancy, can you tell us some of the instances where clients have found themselves wanting when it comes to compliance?
Yeah, I think both in I'll say both in Europe, UK, Europe, and in so if you take the external, usually it's around the due process, right? In terms of how disputes around termination, disputes around how maybe disciplinary matters have been handled, and things like that. Also ones around harassment and family policy breaches. When you come to this side of the jurisdictions, what we found in doing a lot of audits and support is really around the terms and conditions of employment, which is why we're always talking about the terms and conditions of employment, around remuneration disputes, health and safety. So health and safety is something that we need to take very seriously. That's another area. And all these areas obviously sit in the law, right? It's around annual leave. Annual leave is one. A lot of employers don't practice, the leave properly, and that's a problem over time. And so is the terms and conditions of employment is probably one of the issues here. And then, of course, as I said, unfair termination. This is where you are terminating people without following due process. And I want to highlight that, other jurisdictions have different laws, right? The laws generally there is a standard across some of the basic offering, what we call the fringe benefits, in all the laws across the globally. However, there are differentiations depending in some areas of the law, and sometimes that's where in our jurisdiction we have problems. So, for example, the issue about termination at will. Termination at will is not handled in the same way as is handled externally. So if you've got that in your contract, you're in breach, because Ghana's law doesn't really recognize that whole termination at will, right? It has a whole section on how you terminate people. It doesn't matter whether you have one employee, whether you're informal, whether you're sort of a startup. The minute you employ somebody, you're under these laws. So those are some of the areas that are as we work, we find. And some of these things too, I want to make a point of saying, of course, we're talking to small businesses, but we also find in larger companies, multinationals, labor issues doesn't just sit at a certain level, Sometimes, as I said, it's not intentional, it's just that systems and processes have not been put in place, and then eventually becomes a problem. Yeah.
Okay, so what are some of the best practices for small business owners to ensure that they are always compliant when it comes to labor laws?
I would say that you should focus on getting your compliance documentations in line, because that's where you stand to breach. So things like contracts of employment, things like your policies and procedures, things around your company policies. So all the compliance areas within the labor law or the labor regulations, you should just make sure those are in place. Practicing the minimum would actually mean that you're at least covering yourself at the minimum, right? So some of the minimums being that working hours. Working hours is one that's also another problem. In fact, what we've deduced from COVID time is that people who are working from home tend to work longer hours than they need to, because of the fact that initially clients and people were not really looking at working from home policies, but now we know that's improved a bit. You also have people working in industries that are not conventional, right? People are producing products in their homes and things, so their workers are coming to their homes to work, and they are not knowing, or they are not aware that liability is there, right? When people are coming to your home to work, the same rules apply, right? So you've got to make sure that you know what you're supposed to be doing and what you're not supposed to be doing. And if people are going to come into your home, you need to know the things that you need to put into place so you don't leave yourself, or as I say, your back door open for liabilities. So I would say finding out the basics for what you're doing, right, in terms of the staff you've hired, and making sure that those basics are in. And I say that it doesn't always have to be that you have to do it. It gets to a point in your business where you've got to seek support or advice from people who know the area. Like I have the benefit of being able to look at both sides of the coin, as a service provider and as an entrepreneur. And I got to a point in my own business, just going off the point a bit, where I just let go. I let go of things that are not my strength. For example, if you know me, administration is not an area I particularly like. I don't like to micromanage people. I don't see how you get any productivity micromanaging people, right? So I just feel like at some point you've got to seek professional advice. At some point you've got to take advantage of opportunities to kind of get other people to help you, put your best self forward concerning your business and how you're managing your people. I mean, we try to do a lot of different things. Like we try to offer complimentary HR audits and things to help the small businesses, because we know that finance is always an issue, and because we know that some of these issues affect them more. And a lot of the time, a lot won't take it up because they think, well, someone is coming into my business, or someone's going to, I have to tell somebody. And I'm saying that if you're reflecting in that way, you got to ask yourself questions. What is the reason why you're in business? Right? Because at some point, if you want to grow your business and sustain your business, you've got to engage other people, right? You've got to get the professional help in order for your business to go forward. And that means having your human resource systems, especially compliance, in order. Now we know that our millennials, even in Africa, are not making decisions about where they work in a conventional way. some structures where they know that if they have an issue, they can go and talk to somebody, where they know that there is some form of structures and approach to handling them. And it doesn't matter whether you're selling food, or you're hospitality, or you're in, you're running a factory. The issue is people are people. They want to be managed. And the reason why the laws are there is to give you basic guidelines as to how you manage them, how you manage their pay, their working hours, their time off. It's all there. So if you just follow the basics to start, then you can always improve on it. Of course, as you get budget, you can increase salaries and all of those things, but at least meet the minimum, right? Then we're going somewhere. But if you're not meeting even the basic compliance, that doesn't matter whether you're in Africa or Europe or UK or wherever. If you're not meeting the basic minimum, you're going to struggle to attract talent, you're going to struggle to retain talent, and you're also walking down the lines of flouting the law and maybe even getting a consequence like we discussed, fines and compensation and things like that.
Yeah. Yes. Wow. Okay. So, how do you think OML Africa, having to be an audit firm, consultancy, help SMEs with compliance?
Okay, well, I think that we do a lot of thought leadership activities. We do a lot of that. We have resources on our pages. If you follow our social handles, I guess for us, we play a lot more, meaning that we engage a lot more on LinkedIn, because that's where a lot of our customers are. Here on IG, we're kind of a little bit more lighter, but we do create content. We do make periodic offers to SMEs and small businesses and startups on having audits done, which we know that those who have taken it up have found it immensely useful, because then they get a map of what they need to do to improve their people function of their business. Sometimes, depending on our schedule, we do try to offer some free hours in terms of consulting. That's not always possible because we are a very busy company, but generally speaking, we do try to offer advice and resources and things to people. And generally, when people reach out to me, unless of course I'm busy or I don't see, I do try to respond, right, to give some pointers on questions that maybe they ask me on my DMs or in my inboxes, which is on the LinkedIn. But we do a lot. We do a lot more than what our competitors do in terms of trying to engage. Like we're having this conversation now, we try and do these IGs to kind of talk about the issues that we know are affecting the smaller businesses. So people could just be making sure that they subscribe. We do the webinars with the CEOs and staff. People can join in those ones. They're all free. We don't charge, because we're also about building capacity, because we know that if we build your capacity at some point, when you need a problem, we hope that you consider us, but also generally because it's part of our CSR to kind of champion this area of people management. So yeah, I think we do quite a bit. You should know, you're the one dealing with the marketing
Yes,
as well.
yes, I can attest to that. Yes, yes. Okay, so in conclusion, we are saying we need to take compliance seriously as business owners. If not, we find ourselves being liable to many things, and also we need to seek professional advice on how to manage people, because starting a business is one thing, but managing people is another. Do you have any last words for us, Madam Anita?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to reiterate that what we're saying is that wherever you are in a jurisdiction, whether you're in Europe or UK, whether you're in Africa, Ghana, Kenya, wherever you are, the laws on labor or employment law does not change, whether you have one employer, one worker, or 100 or 1,000. Once you employ one person, you're under the law, and the law stipulates the basics that you should follow and you should have in place. So we are basically saying that for small businesses, and that we were defining as those who are hiring between 1, 5, or 10, or even let's say 15, they are usually the ones that kind of fall, because there's a very informal approach to managing things. You're saying you're the ones who sometimes fall a little bit more into breaches, right? That's not to say large companies don't, they do, but a lot more of the small businesses do, because of the reasons I gave. Sometimes it's funding, sometimes it's funds, sometimes it's a whole lot of things, right? So we're saying just at least start by putting in the basic fringe benefits that the law prescribes for you to follow. And then you can begin to work and increase on that as time goes on, right? That at least
Yeah.
protects your risks and liability. That'll be my final words. Just at least try to adopt the basics, right? To minimize your risk and liability, and then of course you can always improve on that as it grows.
Wow. Thank you
That's my
so
final
much
word.
for joining us today. It has been another insightful episode. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in our next edition. Thank you, Madam
So
Anita. Thank
much.
you
Thank you
to
so
our
much, everyone.
viewers. Do not forget that you can check our other sessions on our page, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, OML Africa. Do not forget to turn on your notification for other insightful discussions. You can follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram, OML Africa. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you,
Thank you so
everybody,
much.
and have a
It's my
wonderful
pleasure.
evening.
Bye.
Bye.